Welcome to the WP Builds podcast, bringing you the latest news, interviews, and fun for the WordPress community. Now, welcome your host, Nathan Wrigley. Hello there, and welcome once again to the WP Builds podcast. You have reached episode number 411, entitled Unity in WordPress, Navigating Fractures and Embracing Positivity with Simon Harper. It was published on Thursday, the 27th of February, 2025. My name's Nathan Wrigley, and before our chat with Simon, a few bits of housekeeping. If you have a product or service in the WordPress space, and you would like to get in front of a WordPress-specific audience, guess what? That's what we have. We're a WordPress podcast. We have a WordPress-specific audience. So if you're a theme developer, you make plugins, you have hosting, you have any product or service out there in the WordPress space, get in touch. wpbuilds.com/advertise is the best place to see what we offer, and we would certainly love to onboard you and get your product noticed by a bunch of WordPressers. The other thing to say is that if you'd like to keep in touch with what we do, head to wpbuilds.com/subscribe and look at the options there. There's things like our YouTube channel, X channel, Blue Sky, and all of that goodness. And you can sign up to our newsletter. We do 2 shows a week typically. Our This Week in WordPress show happens on a Monday. It's live. Join us in the comments. And we parcel that up on a Tuesday as a podcast episode. And then we produce a podcast episode every Thursday. That's what you're listening to now. And that will also get a notification. So 2 emails a week, 1 for each of those episodes. Speaking of This Week in WordPress, we're having a bit of a hiatus because of my trip to WordCamp Asia, but we will be back very soon. And if you want to join us, wpbuilds.com/live, most Mondays of the year at 2 p.m. UK time. The WP Builds podcast is brought to you today by GoDaddy Pro. GoDaddy Pro, the home of managed WordPress hosting that includes free domain, SSL, and 24/7 support. Bundle that with the Hub by GoDaddy Pro to unlock more free benefits to manage multiple sites in one place. Invoice clients and get 30% off new purchases. Find out more at go.me/WP Builds. We're also helped out this week by Bluehost. Bluehost, redefine your web hosting experience with Bluehost Cloud. Managed WordPress hosting that comes with lightning-fast websites, 100% network uptime, and 24/7 priority support. With Bluehost Cloud, the possibilities are out of this world. Experience it today at bluehost.com/cloud. And today's episode was also made possible by Omnisend. Omnisend, do you sell your stuff online? Then meet Omnisend. Yes, that Omnisend. The email and SMS tool that helps you make $73 for every dollar spent. The one that's so good, it's almost boring. Hate the excitement of roller coaster sales? Prefer a steady line going up? Try Omnisend today at omnisend.com. And sincere thanks go to GoDaddy Pro, Bluehost, and Omnisend for their ongoing continuous support of the WP Builds podcast. Podcasts like this cannot happen without the generous help of companies just like them. Okay, what have we got for you this week? Well, it's a very nice chat with somebody that I haven't spoken to in the past. I'm talking to Simon Harper. You'll hear right at the beginning, we share a little bit of heritage in the geography of both of our families. That's kind of interesting. And then we get into the topic, which is all about community. We speak about all of the dramas happening in the WordPress community at the moment, how this is affecting the community, how it's fracturing it, and then perhaps a more positive note towards the end, where we try to figure out how this can all be fixed and what that might look like in concrete terms. It's all coming up next. I am joined on the podcast by Simon Harper. Hello, Simon.
Hi there, how's it going?
Yeah, good. Simon lives in a place which is kind of familiar to me, where my grandmother used to live. I used to go there on, I'm going to do air quotes, holiday every year. Bangor in Northern Ireland. Nice to have you with us.
Nice to be here.
Yeah, very, very nice. So we're going to talk today about the WordPress community. We're recording this in the month of February, the very beginning of February. So depending on when you're listening to this, cast your mind back to what was happening, what had happened, and try to remove all of the things that are yet to happen because we don't know about those. But we're going to talk about the WordPress community, and Simon, I think it's fair to say, has got some opinions on those things. Whether or not we allow Simon to go ballistic, who knows? Let's see what happens. But I'm going to caveat this, dear listener, with a few bits and pieces from my side. Wherever we go, I want you to bear in mind that in my head, the role of me is to act as a sort of an impartial person and to sort of steer clear of giving too much of my opinions. Think about journalist or something like that. Not that I claim to be that. So just have that in the back of your mind whilst we get into it. So Simon, February 2025, the WordPress community, how bad is it from your point of view?
I think that, we have that phrase within the community, the WordPress drama or the WP drama. So we're not experiencing anything necessarily new since September. We're maybe experiencing it on a far greater scale than we've experienced before. But, I think like as any community grows and becomes as big as it is, there's going to be dramas and things that kind of go along with that community. And you'll have sides that are taken. Sometimes it's, it's 50-50, sometimes it's not. And as you say yourself, I'm not necessarily here to take sides. I'll certainly give my opinion on things. But I think what's different now about this drama than what we've had before is that the community kind of has split. And I think it hasn't split into one thing. It's split into micro communities. It's kind of like it's a diaspora of what it was before. We're not united anymore. Although I think the united front in some ways was kind of false, because not in a bad way or a negative way. It was just you assume that, we all move as one whenever it's not the case. We're all in WordPress as individuals as well. And that's one of the great things about communities. We have some big voices, we have some small voices, and we have some in between. But I think it's definitely a journey that we've all been on, and it's been hard to escape from for the last, 5-6 months are we at now?
Yeah, this is the story that seemingly is not going anywhere, is it? It seems to have taken a bit of a hiatus. So we'll just give some backstory. What we're really talking about, dear listener, if you're not that obsessed with WordPress, you may not even know what we're talking about. But back in September 2024 at WordCamp US, Matt Mullenweg gave a presentation, and in that there was the beginnings of a fallout between WP Engine, the hosting company, and Matt, you may say Automattic if you like. And really it's been framed since then around trademark and the use of the trademark, WordPress, the word, and the way that it might appear in different sentences and how that can be misconstrued and all of that. But I'm just going to sort of cast the dial back a little bit. I'm going to try going back maybe as much as 20 years when WordPress was this sort of fledgling thing. And at that point, much like other open source projects, money wasn't a thing. Like basically, I think, and I don't know the date when the first commercial plugin came up, and everybody probably scratched their heads and thought, is this something we should be doing? Is that the true nature of open source? But it became a thing in WordPress. And I wonder if the seeds were sown at that moment. I wonder if it's inevitable that if you throw capitalism, if you like, into a project like this, I wonder if there's an inevitable schism at some point, because there's always going to be people who see open source as free at the point of use, no money should be involved. And I'm thinking of other open source communities, like Drupal seems to lean more in that direction, where all the modules, think plugins, are free, always have been. Lots of open source projects where the idea of selling something off the back of it is verboten. But in WordPress, that hump, people got over it and they started to sell things, and it became really popular, and it was probably the accelerant that WordPress needed to become the success that it ultimately became, 43% of the web. Anyway, that's my long way of saying, do you think that when you start throwing money around, that we were basically just waiting for something like this to happen?
I think, well, I'm just about to finish my 16th year doing this. So I wasn't there at the very, 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 very start, but certainly there in the early-ish days. And I think that you've kind of hit the nail on the head, not necessarily just limited to WordPress, but when you start throwing money at anything, there becomes vested interests. But equally, as you kind of were saying there, it's not necessarily a bad thing, because I don't think WordPress would be where it is today, or would have the market share it would have, if it didn't have the premium plugins and the premium themes and the various marketplaces that exist and around. I think that certainly throughout the year, and obviously there's a lot of us recently have been exploring other platforms and looking at alternatives, but I think that's one of WordPress's guiding lights, strengths throughout this time. So regardless of the money, because it is open source and so many people have been invested in it, and obviously it's going through a bit of an identity crisis, you could argue it's been going through it for a while, but there's no other platform like it out there in terms of its flexibility, whether you're using free or premium plugins, or whether you're using free or premium themes. And obviously, themes is a whole other topic now with FSE and all that kind of stuff. But I think that the user doesn't really... Obviously, we've got to a point where not necessarily... growth has kind of stagnated in many ways. We're not growing at the levels that we were. And certainly the types of sites that are using it, when obviously Automattic and various other hosting providers are looking at pushing into enterprise, and that's where the money is. And then, so we're almost now at another level of a different type of investment, because as you say, money got injected in 20 odd years ago, or maybe not initially, obviously the full 20, but now we've gone through the point of, well, hold on, for this to succeed and for this to continue being open source and for it to iterate and move forward, it needs some form of investment. And then obviously that came up recently with posts, that Matt had said, like, if this is burning through our reserve, I think this could impact the community as Automattic fights the lawsuits and stuff. And then you're kind of like, so how tightly is money intrinsic with WordPress and its success? Because obviously for a lot of us, including me, probably very naively as well, I assumed WordPress was everybody's, but it's not. When Matt made that very clear, and so if WordPress is not as open as we believed, so where's the focus now go? Where does the drive now go? And obviously Matt has also said as well out there in the open, which is fine, that they've reduced Automattic's hours. I find that one quite frustrating, because they picked WP Engine's hours. They could have picked anybody else in that list, so they could have done dramatically less. I 100% get that, but they also could have done dramatically more hours than what they chose to do. But even that's going to have an impact on where we go. So if we're going to maybe not see much growth in terms of brand shiny new features for this next year, or maybe, I think some of the commentators are saying it could be 2 years by the time this is done, is this an opportunity for almost a reset within the community and a focus on making WordPress more relevant to the work? Because to nobody, that I say this, and I care. I'm going to preface this. I care, but the majority of users don't care that WordPress is open source. They don't. They probably would if it didn't. If it stopped being open source, and they would see the implications of that, and we would see the likes of, Webflow, just every so often just astronomically raising their prices and saying, well, tough. And or Shopify, which is a genuinely very, very, very good platform, but it's closed, it's controlled for various different reasons. It doesn't have the flexibility that we have because WordPress is open source. So I think there is going to be now this kind of realignment of values, of money. What are we going to use this money for? Where's it going to go? Are we going to focus on enterprise and the rest of the community is kind of along for the ride, or what? Sorry, that was a very long answer.
No, it's good.
Probably a lot of questions.
It's really interesting as well. So I wrote down a couple of things, and we'll get to them in turn. But the first one is about the growth and whether that's stagnated. I do wonder. I was always curious about this fact. Actually, I did wonder if 43%. So there's this figure which is always bandied around.
Yeah.
WordPress has 43% of the CMS market, or the website market, if you like. Let's go with that. So 43% of, let's say, the 10,000 top websites, something along those lines, are built with WordPress. And I guess there is a ceiling there at some point. Like, you can never realistically expect WordPress to take 90%. So maybe 43% was the moment that line would flatten out anyway. Maybe it'll go down, maybe it'll go up, who knows?
Yeah.
But the other thing to throw into the mix there is that these commercial rivals have come along, the Wix and the Squarespace and the Webflow and all of these things, and they're really credible. You know, they do for what many people want out of a website. They do what they do, and the exchange is really understandable. You hand over your $20 a month, and in exchange you get a contract, and that contract says, you know, we'll offer this amount of uptime, we'll offer these features, and if you don't like it, just stop giving us the money and we'll take your website down and you can go and figure something else out.
Yeah.
So they're really compelling because we have this expression in the UK, you'll know it. It does what it says on the tin.
Yeah,
you know,
on sale.
There's nothing hidden. Whereas WordPress is much more confusing. You know, open source. What does that mean? It's free. It can't be free. Nothing's free. Yeah. What does that even mean? Well, it's given away. Well, it can't be any good, and so the argument goes. So I do wonder if maybe we'd reached some sort of natural limit there anyway, and concern around that. It's not going up. That was always going to be something not to worry about. But you said about the fracturing of the community, and you used, you know, you said that it wasn't united anymore, and that is something that I do get a strong impression of. 2 years ago, I had a very, very, how to describe it, almost like a childlike vision of what the WordPress community was, and so it was full of magic dust and unicorns and rainbows and all of this kind of thing, and I thought, it's nothing can touch this. We're just surrounded by beautifully nice people who always have the right endeavors and the right intent. And, you know, there'd be occasional hiccup, but it'll all get sorted out. And that really seems to have changed. People have been, you know, those that side with the Automattic side of things with Matt, they've obviously got their position. You got the other side. Yeah. And I'm so surprised that we've had this schism, but it does seem from where we are now almost irreparable. And I worry about that.
Yeah, and obviously I like to be an optimist and not think that it's not irreparable, but it's certainly not looking great. I mean, I think the biggest problem or issue for me, so like in my WordPress newsletter, I have loads of people from Automattic that subscribe, and from different sites as well, and I have a lot of friends who are in Automattic, and equally, I think the problem is your perception of like a moral compass or ethics, or where you personally feel a situation should go. And I think a lot of this situation for me is all about a word, and it's integrity. And, you know, speaking very briefly, and this is not an Automattic bashing at all, it's just, you know, a matter of fact thing that we had 2-3 realignments from Automattic within the last couple of years, and not everybody was able to take those realignments. So there are some people that are in Automattic and don't agree with Matt but want to do really good there, and then there's other people who side with Matt, and that's fine. I think the problem where we're at the minute is there's a lot of people in the community who want to say things one way or another and can't, or not that they can't, but they don't feel that they can. Because I know there are some people that can't say things, and that's not fine, but you know, that's where we're at. But I think that for us to repair the community, or try to repair the community, or to envisage the community as community 2.0 and where we go from here, is that there needs to be a lot of integrity and a lot of honesty. So honest conversations need to be had, like whether it's actually about trademarks or not, say it. Or, you know, whether it's about something else, or I believe X and I believe Y, but, you know, behind the scenes, actually, it's I believe A, B, and C. I think we, in order for us to heal and move forward, there needs to be honest conversations, and some of those are going to be painful. I think some of the conversations, like anything that happen on social media, particularly on X, you know, they're not particularly healthy. And thankfully, I have not seen too many of those, but equally, I've seen some horrific conversations that, you're like, hold on, this isn't becoming of any community. Forgetting WordPress, this is not how we should be treating each other within a community. It is the complete opposite definition of what a community is. A community is a fellowship of people together. We don't all have to be the same, and we don't all have to believe the same things. But a community is as strong as its foundation. So if our foundations are pretty weak, where do we go? And this is why there's these other communities now that have sprung up. And a lot of them have, like, you've got the WP Community Collective. And even then, there's misinformation and misunderstanding around them. Like, I was chatting with a couple of people who were saying, they're a charity. It's like, they're not a charity. They're not for profit. They are there to make money, but they're not for profit, but they're not a charity. And with then X today doing something very strange with completely redefining communities. I don't know if you saw this, but they have completely changed the community postings. So there used to be a WordPress community, which I'm a moderator in. I'm not very active in it anymore, but now X are saying that whenever you post in a community, that post now no longer stays in the community. It's seen by everybody in your timeline and the community, and everybody can reply. So there's only certain moderations that are going on. So all of a sudden, closed communities are becoming open communities. I don't think we were ever necessarily a closed community, but there are certain things that are kept behind closed doors, like anything. And I think that, we just need to, and whenever I say we, I mean the community. I think we need to drive it forward, because what has been made very clear, rightly or wrongly, is that the leadership of Automattic doesn't care about the community anymore in the way that it did. I don't think it doesn't care completely. I don't think for 1 second that Matt doesn't completely not care, but there has been a realignment there and towards their attitude of the community. And to an extent, I get that, because there has been some horrific things said about automaticians that kind of aren't fair. There may be some things that were said were kind of, well, you might have a point, but equally be human about it, please. I just think it's that classic thing of, can't we all get along? No, we can't, but we need to learn to move forward together. And the one thing that I am most concerned about, and then I'll let you speak, apologies, is this fractioning of the community. So yes, it's great to have all these different makeups and stuff, but if we continue to fracture and keep growing apart and there's no sort of collective coming together, then what really does that mean for the future? Do we all have these little mini camps and tribes that we're members of? I'm not a fan of tribalism, but that's another geopolitical thing, so we probably won't get into today.
No. So here's a couple of observations, and some of these are a bit more philosophical than they are practical, and they're not bound to WordPress in particular. But I remember reading something a long time ago. If we cast our mind back really a long way into the evolution of humans, the idea that, as a species, we were kind of pretty good at knowing a handful of people that would gather around the fire with us at night, and maybe that number was sort of 7 or 8 or 25 or something like that. But it's a modest number. And when I was a kid, that same kind of thing was true. We basically knew the people that lived close to us. We knew of people that were further away because we had radio and telly and things like that. But basically every single person that you knew, you'd been in proximity with at some point. And now we've got this really interesting experiment where the entire world is kind of trying to, and in the WordPress sense, the entire WordPress community of whatever number of millions of people that is. Obviously, people come in and go away, and some are more vociferous than others. But I do wonder how practical it is to expect cohesion on that scale, because well, I mean, just humans in a room can fall out with each other and start, landing blows, verbal or otherwise. And so maybe it's just really unrealistic to expect this, like I said, unicorns, rainbows approach. Maybe criticism, dissent, anger even is the norm, no matter whether we'd like it to be different. And I hope not, because I think one of the things that I noticed also on sort of social media is how quickly civility turned into, well, the opposite of that.
Yeah.
Uncivil. It became quite personal quite quickly, and the worst of people can quickly appear on Twitter or whatever it may
Yeah.
be. And I think you've obviously got some insulation. You put some incendiary comment out there, and there's no expectation that you'll ever see that person probably in real life. So I don't really know where I'm going with that, but it was just more of a sort of big observation that maybe we just have to accept that the default is lack of unity, not entirely unity. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, totally. I mean, the people I'm connected with now, or connected with more deeply within the community, are not the same as they were, 4 or 5 years ago, for various different reasons, and not necessarily anything related to the drama. It's just, I suppose, whenever you're talking about that and not necessarily having to have the unity, I think it's more than a question of, should we not leave things better than when we found them? So should the goal of the community or the micro communities going forward be to make WordPress that little bit better with each increment, with each, maintenance release, that if you want to take it down to that level, how can we leave WordPress a little bit better than when we found it at the last time we encountered it? And I think that obviously WordPress is now in a place where it's probably got the most media attention it's probably ever had in its history, I would say. Whether that's good or bad, I don't know. But I think that there's a lot of people within the community that are really wanting to drive it forward, and in a good way. And they have noble ambitions and noble goals, but they're getting pushed down from on high. And that I don't like, because, as you say, if we don't have to be united, if we don't have to be fully aligned, that's okay. But equally, if you can see something as good, but it's maybe a competitor to you, or it's a bit of competition, don't put it down. Because I think there's a lot of really good people in the community, and without saying too much, people will know who they are, or the higher up one, and who have come off hard and make, for example, one of the big, because I can say, because this was officially released, I think it was 2 or 3 days ago. 4th of February, 1st of February. So obviously with Patchstack and Oliver, that whole situation of Patchstack not being allowed to sponsor, and told their contributions by the WordPress community team were not enough. Now, obviously, I think it's Felipe has moved on, or he's no longer part of that team or whatever, and Matt did apologize, but then nothing else kind of came out of that, except now the one thing that has kind of come out of it is the explanation has been, instead of a personal explanation to Patchstack and Oliver and the team, it's been kind of like, well, here's our realignment, here are the new rules around who can and who can't sponsor a WordCamp. And it's trademark and money and, contribution art and you're just, that's where I don't understand things, where if you say, look, we apologize, that wasn't the best worded, we will look into it. And it sounds like, oh, okay, that's kind of the half apology and an acknowledgement that, of the work that the Patchstack team do. And I'm just picking them as one example, there's others. And then all of a sudden, still over a month later, the only official communication that comes out of, well, here's actually the new rules for everybody. And you will never meet those rules in their particular circumstance. So unless you change a few things, and it's just like, right, well, how does that advance the community? Because Patchstack does more for other platforms, outside of WordPress. And again, that's just one example. I'm just scared that's the biggest part of the community. So the people that do want to move the community forward are maybe scared or facing pressures that they weren't facing before, or things are even harder because certain companies choose to push back.
I wonder if there's a sort of solution around out in the environment somewhere. So the Automattic, certainly the sort of official way of paying for the project. So to put the contributors bombs on the seats, as we say in the UK. Sorry if that offends you, dear listener. The idea is that this notion of Five for the Future came along a number of years ago, and Five for the Future was this endeavor to encapsulate some reasonable expectation of what you may put back. So let's say that your business, the fulcrum of it is WordPress. The theory goes, well, let's have 5% of your stuff. So it could be 5% in terms of time, it could be 5% in terms of revenue. 5%, put that back in. But obviously there's nothing apart from a moral compass to compel people to do that. And I think really that's the knob of the WP Engine and Automattic dispute really around that. But other communities, most notably the one that I've noticed is the Drupal community. The Drupal community seemed to have hit this same roadblock many, many years ago. And they've come up with this idea of you can only be a part of the community at certain levels if you fulfill certain predefined responsibilities. And so, in other words, it's a bit like carrot and stick. If you want the privilege, I guess you would have to regard it as a privilege. If you want the privilege of being able to sponsor a DrupalCon, think WordCamp, then you have to be able to prove that you met your, again, I'll use the word Five for the Future, but it isn't that. You have to be able to prove that you met those requirements. And if you did, then you can become a sponsor. And if you didn't, then you didn't. But also, you might appear on the Drupal.org homepage. You might be able to, I don't know, for example, receive a certain badge of honor to say, look at us. We're committing to the community. And that then is a kind of badge that you maybe could put on your website. So there's this sort of dangling carrot of, look, here's all the nice things you can have if you play ball. And I don't really think we have anything like that. And I don't even know if that would work. I'm not entirely sure how it's worked on the Drupal side of things, but certainly Dries, who was the founder of Drupal, put that out there very shortly after September and all of this stuff kicked off. And so I don't know if you've got any intuitions as to whether or not some kind of carrot stick approach might be a way forward, certainly to reconcile the big money with the community anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I think I probably hold one of those rare accolades of being the one-off, maybe, the only WordCamp organizers to never have attended their own WordCamp.
Yeah, that's pretty unique.
Yeah. So we had our inaugural WordCamp Belfast in 2016, and I was pretty much second in command, and I never got to see my WordCamp because I was flying out to the United States on the weekend of the WordCamp, but I was like, I'm doing all this anyway. And certainly very much then, like being that side of things and organizing and learning what goes into, a WordCamp and the money that's involved, and the money that's involved now, it would be very different, but WordCamps would not happen at the ticket price level that we're asked to, make them affordable, they just wouldn't happen without sponsors. Whether they're GoDaddy, SiteGround, WP Engine, Automattic, WooCommerce, whoever, it just wouldn't. So money does kind of make the world go round, and obviously that's one of the ways that people can contribute with the Five to the Future, as you were saying. And I think, you look at other people, and you've got what Stripe has their 1% or whatever it is, their climate thing. If it's and you've got I think it's the football has one as well. I should know this being a big Liverpool fan, but there's the 1% that you can give of your salary, or it's 5%, something like that. There's certain footballers have signed up to it, and managers and things, and you donate into this pot, and it goes off to whatever charity needs it. And it's broken up and kind of given off. And I think then it's a question of, if you're giving money, what's the motive? What is your motive for giving? Is it to genuinely give back to the community with no ask, and maybe the odd thanks? And there's a lot of people to do that. There's lots of people who do private donations for things all the time. It's like nobody needs to know we did this, just go and do whatever. And then obviously there has to be transparency on the other side. Look, if we're giving this money and we're giving it freely, we need to know that it is going to be used appropriately. But then who makes those decisions? And this is the tough thing now, where we're having all these realignments of, you have to meet GPL, you have to be Five for the Future, you have to be X, you have to be Y. And then to answer your question, you have now other people saying within the community going, well, hold on 2 seconds. Why do we have to run WordCamps? Let's just run WP camps and we'll do it that way. And that's the way we'll support each other. That's the way we'll grow the community. Forget WordCamp Central, forget WordCamps. We're just going to do it as WP because, again, just as an example, and obviously it was very well worded and it's on their website, you know, the WP Community Collective were asked to change their name and they said no. Because as it's been established, WP is not trademarked. It's not confusing. Here's a big explanation and a context for the request that you've made and why it's not happening. And fair play to them for doing it because it was using Automattic's own words and Automattic's own terminology to explain why they are allowed to do what they're allowed to do. But this is what I think is going to be one of the solutions to your question. There are going to be companies that go, do you know what? You know, SiteGround, for example, you know, I know they've been big contributors for a long time, or even let's pick a bigger one, GoDaddy. We're going to hold our own WordPress community events. And, you know, we're not going to be forced to use Meetup, but we're not going to do X, Y, and Z. I mean, that could very much be a very, very quick solution to a lot of this. Not a long-term one, obviously, but it, you know, that could be a quick one.
I really have the most dreadful understanding of economics, especially at the level that we're talking of, you know, right at the top, the amount of money that is contributed and so on. But I'm imagining that the project itself is fairly expensive to run, you know, certainly millions and millions, but I don't know how that actually stacks up and what the numbers are.
Yeah.
And I found all of this so confusing because I don't really know what the numbers are. And I haven't gone looking, so I don't know how transparent it is to find out what all of this costs and what, you know, what numbers can be attached to a particular event and how much can you expect back from WordCamp Central and what have you.
Yeah.
And so I find all of this, as soon as money gets involved, it really does make the whole conversation a little bit more difficult. It would be so lovely, again, rainbows and unicorns. It would be so lovely if everybody just gave 5% of everything. But that's not realistic because most people are just willing to use the software, you know, they're not wanting to contribute back. But again, coming back to this sort of carrot and stick approach, the Drupal example, and again, I could be getting this wrong, but I think basically the idea was never to go and shame somebody. The idea was to only shine a light on the good that had happened. And so let's say, for example, company X never contributes anything. Well, we don't mention company X. They just get left out of the conversation, but company Y gives us, I don't know, 3-4%. Well, we mention them a bit. Company Z over here, they give 10% of everything. We mention them a lot. They get loads of kudos and lots of representation, and you know, we blow all the trumpets for them. I just don't know if that's a solution, but it kind of feels like it might be.
It's a logical one. I don't know if, as you say, if it's that simple, particularly with the money involved. Like, okay, we're just going to stop talking about company X. You say, no, we're just going to promote company Y. But it is a very logical kind of approach. And I think that shaming thing is very important because I would not... Now, I've diversified over, like, I'm about to finish my 16th year in business doing this, and I've diversified a little bit over the years, but still my core is WordPress. And I am very grateful for the project and for the community because I would not, you know, it's helping me put food on the table and all that kind of stuff. Now, it's not entirely down to WordPress, but a huge amount of it is. And I know I could give back more if I really put my mind to it. And there's different ways I could do it. I've gotten better over the years, but there is, you kind of feel, that's the whole thing of, you know, that definition of what exactly contribution is. And it's come up so many times, you know, Remkes de Vries did a really good newsletter blog post on it last year, and it obviously came back up again with what's going on. Paul Charlton from WP Tuts has talked about it. I tweeted about it and got a lot of posted, whatever they call it on X these days, and got a lot of good feedback, which is really, really nice. But there's a lot of people that are in the same boat. We're feeling that they are contributing, but that they're not, or they're being made to feel that they're not contributing. And I think for big companies and obviously bigger scenarios that like to work out, you know, there does have to be certain definitions of what contribution is, but I don't think there should be belittling or shaming because it's, you know, that not to bring religion into it, but people will know a lot of it. The parable of the widow's mite, where you give as much as you can, and that could be significantly more than the rich person who doesn't give very much. There are some absolutely phenomenal people in the WordPress community that give an awful lot and don't get any recognition for it, but they also don't seek it. And I think, as you've kind of hit the nail on the head with the Drupal example, you're right. It's a simple, on the surface and logical way to do it, but people are so complex.
Yeah.
I think that's the problem. I think, again, it's kind of the theme that if you're looking at, what Drupal is, that's kind of thing. They're wanting to make it better, inch it forward, leave it better than what it was. I think, again, sorry to bring that back and beat that drum, but it's just kind of like, do we want to let the next 2 years, and I'm not accusing Automattic or WP Engine of anything here, I'm just going to preface that, but do we as a community want Automattic and WP Engine to define the next 2 years of WordPress? Or do we as a community want to help define the next 2 years of WordPress? So as you say, there's going to be negative press, there's going to be things said. So what about we shout that a little bit louder with the positivity of people within the community, of the individuals, of the organizations, of the agencies that are doing good? Because WordPress does some incredible things. It powers some amazing businesses and foundations and charities and everything.
That's a really interesting point. And honestly, doing this podcast, you don't have to look very hard to find incredible people doing incredible things. Some of them who have no interest in being acknowledged. They're just doing it for the good of humanity, for want of a better word. And I honestly, this kind of is an interesting point. The idea that, do we just wait as a community and just let the legal battle take its, let them have all the swings at each other that they can manage, see where the court lands on that, and then regroup and think, okay, what do we do now? Now that all of the bits and pieces have fallen to the ground and we can look at the lay of the land, do we now move forward in a particular direction, or do we do a bit more of what you're saying? Do we have some sort of endeavor to just ignore it, but in a different way? Ignore what's going on with the legal battle, but just let's raise the voices. Let's talk about the good things that are happening, and kind of just, I don't know, bring a sense of positivity back, because that in essence is the kernel of what I'm discovering. It's that positivity seems to have evaporated a little bit. Whereas a year ago, there was so much good news in the WordPress space. In fact, you were really hard pushed to find bad news. It was almost impossible to find anything incendiary, anything bad. The occasional thing if you looked hard. And now it feels like there's a lot of negative commentary, negative things out there. And maybe, I don't know, for you, maybe it's just going to be easier to ignore that, quieten that in your mind, mention the people that are doing good things in the newsletter you've got and things like that. Maybe that's the best way for now. Let the big boys have their legal dispute, figure out what's left at the other end.
Yeah, and it's people like yourself that was doing it, because I think what was the first one with you and Mark Westgard, who did the positivity one.
Yeah, it's called the Nice Show.
Yeah, and it was brilliant. And again, with my newsletter, I've been covering it pretty much since September, but then it was a couple of issues ago, for 2 issues in a row, I just said, what, screw it. I'm just going to celebrate everybody in the community. And those 2 issues were ridiculous in terms of the engagement. I was just kind of like, all right, people want this. So people want to hear this. I want to hear a little bit of the good stuff, that's going on. And I think that is what we need, personally, or certainly within my small part of the community or my small sphere of the community, people just want to hear some positivity, because there is so much good stuff going on.
It really is. I mean, it's almost boundless. There's communities spread throughout the world where WordPress is the bedrock of their entire livelihoods. There's people writing code which they're giving away for free. There's people, reviewing code for free. There's people making materials so that you can learn WordPress, be that on YouTube or wherever they're putting it. There's just literally a million things happening. And I do wonder sometimes if the social network algorithm has just kind it's just kind of upended our capacity to see that. Because what do you see when you look for, I don't know, if you search for WordPress, I'm fairly sure that you're going to get a laundry load of stuff which doesn't feel great. Yeah. But if you dug a little bit deeper, subscribe to the people who are making that endeavor. So I'm fully encouraging you to go and, subscribe to what Simon's going on his newsletter. And maybe that's what we need. Just a little bit more understanding, step back, view the landscape a little bit differently. The sky maybe won't fall in. Let it all settle down. I don't know. I wish I did.
I think the step back thing, and I'll just say that quickly, is important. That's the other thing. I mean, like, we are very quick to speak and very slow to think. And I think that that's what we kind of need to do. Whenever something is kind of, thrown out there, there's going to be multiple sides of the story. There's going to be motives, there's going to be context, and you're going to have your own bias that's coming with it. So I do think we need to slow down a little bit. So it's that wonderful book, Think Fast and Slow. Yeah. I don't know if you've read it. So it's that kind of, we just like to do word vomit, and we need to do less of that.
Yeah. And interestingly, I saw a post today, and I can't actually remember where it came from. I've not been in the WordPress. I really started using WordPress in about 2015 and started taking interest in it beyond just a piece of software in about 2016, something like that. And but my understanding is that the community has been through several, albeit not as big as this, I don't feel. It has been through several fairly seismic things in its past. Yeah. And somehow that all was okay in the end. Maybe people have got an opinion that this is going to be more of a rift, and things can't go back to the way they were. I don't know, but maybe given a fair wind, we'll be in February 2026 and we'll be going, what was that?
What was it all about?
Got amnesia about all of that stuff. Have to wait and see. Simon, we're at the sort of 45-minute mark, so I guess maybe we should think about knocking it on the head. Is there anything that you would like to mention specifically? Give your newsletter a plug. Let's go with that.
Okay, no problem. We can do that. You can subscribe to my newsletter at loopwp.com or newsletter.loopwp.com, whichever way you want to go to it. And it's where I talk about WordPress and WooCommerce. And not just plugins. I talk about the community and the themes and topics and celebrating people really within the community. So we'll see if I can keep that going. I think, as we've both agreed, there's lots of good things to talk about.
Yeah, there's no shortage of things. No. It's just whether or not you get weary of all of the other stuff in the meantime, and think it's harder to get through all of the nonsense that's going on and shine a light on the good things. I think there's some part in all of us that enjoys a drama.
Oh yeah.
It keeps us interested. I mean, can you imagine watching the BBC drama that comes on more or less every night, where basically everything was great all the time? There's no interest there.
You would switch off.
Yeah, you need some sort of murder mystery or something where people argue all the time. So maybe this is just part of life's rich tapestry, and we'll figure it out. So go and check it out, Loop WP. And all that it remains for me to do is to say thank you to Simon for joining us today. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that's all we've got time for this week. I hope that you enjoyed that. If you have any commentary, we love it when you produce comments on the WP Builds website. Head to wpbuilds.com and search for this episode. It is number 411. So if you search for that and leave us a comment there, we would really, really appreciate it. The WP Builds podcast is brought to you today by GoDaddy Pro. GoDaddy Pro, the home of managed WordPress hosting that includes free domain, SSL, and 24/7 support. Bundle that with the Hub by GoDaddy Pro to unlock more free benefits to manage multiple sites in one place. Invoice clients and get 30% off new purchases. Find out more at go.me/WP Builds. We're also helped out this week by Bluehost. Bluehost. Redefine your web hosting experience with Bluehost Cloud. Managed WordPress hosting that comes with lightning-fast websites, 100% network uptime, and 24/7 priority support. With Bluehost Cloud, the possibilities are out of this world. Experience it today at bluehost.com/cloud. And today's episode was also made possible by Omnisend. Omnisend, do you sell your stuff online? Then meet Omnisend. Yes, that Omnisend. The email and SMS tool that helps you make $73 for every dollar spent. The one that's so good, it's boring. The one that's so good, it's almost boring. Hate the excitement of roller coaster sales? Prefer a steady line going up? Try Omnisend today at omnisend.com. And sincere thanks go to Bluehost. And sincere thanks go to GoDaddy Pro, Bluehost and Omnisend for their ongoing continuous support of the WP Builds podcast. Okay, that truly is all I've got time for. Don't forget, we'll be back most Mondays, wpbuilds.com/live, 2 p.m. UK time for the This Week in WordPress show. We'll have a podcast for you next Thursday as well. Join us for that. But also, why not have a little bit of a poke around the wpbuilds.com website? Have a look in the archives. We're doing a show with Joe Dolson at the moment, all about accessibility. You'll find that in the archives section of our menu, and there's a whole variety of other things as well. Okay, I'm going to fade in some cheesy music. Say, stay safe. Have a good week. Bye-bye for now.